Welcome back to the channel if you are a subscriber, and if this is the first time visiting this channel, then thank you for stopping in. And of course, this character needs no introduction. You've either seen the movie or you've seen the prior Toy Story movies. Whether or not you've seen the movie or not, there's plenty of toys out there, and the 6-inch figure really lends itself to some customization. If you have the 12-inch, well, that's great. I don't have that particular figure in stock, but we're going to work on this one. But here's a few things that you're going to need to keep in mind to get this finished result. You'll need a microswitch, you'll need a chip LED, and some acrylic paint. You're also going to need epoxy sculpt, a hot knife, and some styrene to create that small door on the switch. Let's get started. So the only thing I can truly say about this figure is that it's meant to be played with. It does not come apart easily. Even the head was a real pain to remove. Yes, you can heat it up with the hair dryer and pull it off, or if you want to boil it like an egg, yes, you can pull the head off. Everything else is pretty much melted together or welded together, heat welded. Because there are no seams, there are no screws, there are no pegs that are visible. It is meant to be played with hard, and this toy is going to withstand a lot of play from kids. So yeah, it's going to withstand a lot of trying to take it apart from any collector. So we're only going to rip off the head and paint the rest of the body right where it is. So we're going to start with the head, and as I mentioned before, this thing's meant to be played with. This paint is incredibly stubborn. It does not come off. I actually had to go to an extreme, and here I am using the nail polish remover, and this pretty much takes off anything. But it's just not taking anything off on this. After minutes of rubbing that brown paint on the brows, very little came off. On the other action figures, the collectibles, paint comes right off. On this, no. So I had to go to another extreme, and I actually had to sand the face, sand the eyebrows. I ended up starting with a knife and trying to scratch those off, and that just didn't leave a clean surface. So I did what I could there. I scratched off the most of it. And I still had to bring down that ridge where the paint was, because I did not like the way the brows were painted or molded. I want the look that's on the front of the box, and this just wasn't it. It was not going to do it for me, so I went to that extreme. However, after working with the knife, I had to polish out the surface to be able to use epoxy sculpt and reform the eyebrows, and it's not going to stick or look good if the surface is rough. So I had to use a file to go just a little further down. I'll let you watch the rest of the video so you can have the idea. So I finally got it done. I reshaped the eyebrows with the epoxy sculpt, and then I redid the hair with the epoxy as well, because this is the look that's on the front of the box. This is what I really would have liked coming out of the package. So I know a lot of you are wondering why I decided to change the expression or even the hair. Well, if you look at the character references, the look at his face is totally different from what's in the toy. It's a very stern, very fixed look, not only in the expression on the eyebrows, but the eyes themselves, even on the facial expression on his grin. And of course, the hair in the package of the front of the box is totally different than what's on the toy. And I really wanted that look from the actual movie. Too bad we didn't get an extra head sculpt, but this is not a collector's toy. This is a child's toy. But this is the look that I wanted for my particular figure. That's why I went with this choice. So I often get questions or even comments regarding the technique of hand brushing or airbrushing. Is there a big difference? Should I do it? Should I even get an airbrush? Why should I? I can do it better by my hand. Well, that's really just a preference. Is there a difference? Absolutely. Can you tell? Yes, you can. And there's a big difference between airbrushing something and hand painting. And I'm going to show you that on this particular video. Instead of just showing you the technique and telling you that it's better than the other, I want to show you the difference. Because there's actually a purpose for each technique. It's not one that is better than the other. Many times it is really necessary to use both techniques on the same project. But yes, you can tell the difference. So I'm going to paint half of the figure with the airbrush. And yes, using an airbrush on something this small requires a lot of masking. And that's one of the reasons why most people don't want to do this, because it's tedious to mask something. It takes a lot of time, and it's just really a lot of attention to detail. However, hand painting, you can forego a lot of this because you can be precise with the size brush you are using. Many times you do have to mask if you want particular straight contrasting color lines. But I want to show you the difference between the two, and then you decide what's best for your project. Personally, I use both because both techniques really complement each other. So I've gone ahead and used a hand brush on most of the figure, and this part on the actual gray areas, just to illustrate the difference. And as you can tell, you can really see the brush strokes. You can even see the direction of the brush strokes. It's really difficult, especially if you're mixing your own paint, to be consistent, especially if you didn't mix that paint thoroughly. Now, I've gone ahead and masked out the right-hand side of looking at the figure from the screen, and you can tell the difference. You can tell the tone is continuous. You can tell the tone on the left of the figure that's not masked, the leg on the figure that's not masked. You can still see those brush strokes, and you can still see the changes in the density in the tone. It doesn't look good. The other, on the right hand side that you see here, that's what it should look like. That's what we want throughout the whole figure. So I've gone ahead and removed the masking so you can see a clear view of the legs on the gray portions, and now you can really see a difference. The airbrushing side really looks more like it's factory made. The one on the other side that's with a hand brush, it looks pretty much homemade. I don't want it to look that way. I gotta have it to look as best as possible. So I've gone ahead and I've repainted all of those gray areas with the airbrush. Now I have a continuous tone and color throughout all of those areas. They all match. It now looks like it's actually factory made. And I am much happier with this because it's a very clean and very presentable project. If this is all you do to your project, you're going to be so much happier with your project. Now you may have noticed some darker lines around the edges, or darker gray lines, and I'm using the same technique that I used on my Dragon Ball Z project. If you want to see that, I'll put the link in the screen, and that way you can take a look at the technique in using the airbrush on that. But I pre-shaded everything, and then I went ahead and painted over the shading. Instead of using black as a black wash, because it's really going to stain this plastic, it stains incredibly easy, I went with a darker gray, a little bit darker than the gray that's on those gray patches, and then went back over it with the airbrush in a light or off-white, so that it's not a stark contrast with the plastic. I wanted to match it as close as possible. And I toned down my grays, and it looks more like natural weathering. So with the airbrush, you can be precise by going down and getting a fine line and controlling that trigger. A dual action airbrush has that possibility. You push down for air, you pull back for paint. Depending how much you pull back is the amount of paint that you get. However, the downside to this is because this is acrylic paint, it tends to clog or dry the end of the airbrush, so you continuously have to clean it. But that's not a problem. I didn't have to mask all of this, I freehanded it. Any overspray that's on the greens or the purples, we can clean off with some acetone. And then we can go back over it and just cover back up with some silver or the silver rub and buff to make it look like it's battle damage. But in this case, I was able to do a lot of the hand painting with the airbrush without having to mask the entire figure out again. once you finish all of your airbrushing, you can go back in with your actual hand brush and go into all of those fine straight line details like the blacks around the elbows and the knees, etc. Any dry brushing you've got to do, that's where that comes in so helpful, and that's where both of those techniques end up complementing each other really well. Let's take a look now at the lighting. All of the lighting used in this particular video and many of the others is from evandesigns.com, and I will leave a link in the description below so that you can pick up individual items or an actual lighting kit for your project. Now in this particular figure, I only placed one light and I placed it up at the front. And I did have to drill into the back of the figure to fish out the wire to lead it through and solder it to a micro switch that has a battery already on it. This is a micro switch in the back, and this is the door that I had to fabricate for it, or the plate, because I had to remove part of the plastic using a hot knife. And that technique is demonstrated in some of the other videos. I'll leave a link for you to follow. This is the micro switch already prefabricated with a battery holder, and it's already set to go. All you've got to do is attach it to the LED either with solder or twisting the wires and placing your battery in there. The battery about this size for a figure like this, depending on how much you use it, it should last you 15 hours. Now, if you want anything further than that, you can actually use an USB connection, and you can also get that from Evan Designs. The light in the front is a chip LED, pretty much the size of what you see here. These are some extras from another kit that I have. This is about the smallest you want to go, and you do have to drill at an angle and straight down into the chest cavity to fish it through the back around that neck peg. So I know a lot of you love those before and afters. Well, here's one of those. Straight out of the package on the left side, totally modified on the right hand side. And yes, I did spray it down with some matte spray because I love the way that looks. It just totally makes the plastic look, in my opinion, that much better quality instead of that toy plastic look. It is a toy, but in this case, bringing it to another level with the sculpt, the paint, etc. Now, let's take a look at a few poses that this figure can make. And keep in mind that it is a child's toy, so a lot of the articulation that you want as a collector is not there. But it still gives you some dynamic looks. And adding the paint and that light under the chin really throws in a whole different dynamic. Let's take a look at the video here. Now, if you are interested in more videos like this about lighting your figures, I'm going to leave a playlist up at the upper right corner, and that way you can go through some of the other projects that go into a lot of other details as to how to put in light in some of your figures. And of course, where to get the lights. That's going to be so important, where to get a lot of these products. But what's really nice is what you can see in the video, what you can achieve. Keep in mind that all of these videos are just an idea for you to expand your creativity on your project. Once you go into Evan Designs, you're going to find out that you could do so much more with what you already have on your shelf. And don't worry if you pull another figure you've already worked on and rework it. You're going to find that you're going to be enjoying that figure that much more. In the meantime, take a look at the video, and we'll see you here next time.